Welcome, everybody, to our latest, and I guarantee you to be among the most provocative and entertaining of our dialogues with leaders, thinkers, badasses, rogues, and troublemakers. And that is probably one of the best descriptions I can give to you, Brad. Brad Blanton, PhD, psychologist, best known for your work as the author of Radical Honesty. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You are a shit stirrer.
What do you mean?
You like to stir up the bullshit of the world. And, we're here to talk about what does it mean to live an inspired life. And my favorite quote of yours, and the one you'll probably be quoted for 500 years from now, of all your quotes, is the mind is a bullshit generating machine, which is kind of sets the tone for a lot of your work. And a lot of what we've been talking about in this summit is separating what truly inspires a person, a man, in the moment, separate from the bullshit of culture, outside voices. Your specialty is also how do we separate from the bullshit that we're creating to defend ourselves, to create stories around ourselves. So let's start by cleaning out some bullshit. How do you recommend guys start cleaning out what's not true in the stories we tell ourselves?
It's really a process of simplification. It's getting simple. So I always say to people, I'm not telling you these things to make you smarter. Getting smarter won't help. Getting dumber is what helps. And so basically after about 10 years of running this workshop, which I ran for about 20 some years and do still occasionally, the 8-day workshop called the Course in Honesty.
Mm-hmm.
After doing that for about 10 years, we finally came up with a chant that leads to enlightenment without fail within 3 minutes.
Okay.
And I usually charge people $3,000 for this, but I want to give it away free start right off now.
Okay.
And it's about getting grounded in your experience being more important than figuring things out. And so this chant that always leads to enlightenment is this. Duh, duh. And you can get there within 3 minutes. If you slobber, you can get there in a minute and a half.
Extra lubrication there.
And you just get so goddamn dumb. You communicate directly with other people, and they communicate directly with you. And what gets communicated is the presence that you have and the noise that you have to make. And the dumber you get, the more grounded you are, and the better the connection. And that's where love comes from. It comes from dumbness. It doesn't come from smartness.
Even as you were saying, Don, I kind of felt it in my body. I felt a relief.
Uh-huh.
I'm as guilty as anyone of staking my identity and being smart. And as I travel, it's crazy. I'm traveling through the Caribbean right now. I was just in Colombia. Everywhere I go, everyone's looking good in their selfie, right? There's such a, and look, I'm as guilty as anyone. I'm not saying I'm different, but there's such a pressure to look good these days. And what you're saying is the key to liberation and the key to love is to stop looking good and stop looking smart or sounding smart.
Yeah, it's just to give up on thinking that gets you very far. Because usually your mind is not to be trusted. If you don't trust your own mind, you can't trust another one either. So the only reasonable stance is to be paranoid. But the more paranoid you are, the more thoughts you come up. So to be stupidly paranoid is the best possible thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, being smart gets you money. It gets you status and culture, but you raise something else. Like being dumb, somehow letting go gets you love, and I'm really interested in that. I don't want to go by that too fast. What do you mean by that?
Well, dumb is different from stupid. Like Donald Trump is stupid. All right, but we're talking about being. What's on my business card, it says my title in Radical Honesty Enterprises is Chief Troublemaker. That's my job. All right.
That's the Native American shamanic name. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that because it means I'll come in there and question my own assertions and everyone else's, and we're together engaged in a mutual task of helping each other uncover from all the bullshit what is real in front of us.
Mhm.
And what is real is usually not some complex abstract concept. It is like beans, potatoes.
Right. What did he call it?
Woman, a man.
William Burroughs called it seeing what's on the end of your fork, right?
Yeah.
Um, how is this different, at the risk of sounding smart, how is this different from sort of Zen notions of no mind, of emptying the mind?
It's not different from it. It's really the same idea. The idea is that it's a little bit more playful even than Zen, though. Zen's playful enough, but this is more Sufi-like. It's like, what is your mind for? It's a toy. It's a toy. Don't take it too seriously. And you use this toy to play a game. It's a game. Don't take it too seriously. And you can have a lot of fun, like some of my favorite people are between about 1 year of age and 10 years of age. I love little kids that age because we're constantly pretending.
Yes.
And we know we're pretending. So we'll pretend Star Wars or whatever the most recent thing we saw or whatever's going on. And we run around, play and do it, make a lot of noise, and have a lot of fun. And it's just great. Pretending is a lot of fun. But when you get to be about 10 or 11 or 12, you start this second level of pretending called let's pretend that we're not pretending when we are.
I like that.
A problem. Because the game of pretending that we're not pretending when we are is very confusing from both sides.
Let's talk about that. What does that mean that we stop pretending that we're pretending? It's a big question, obviously. What are we pretending from age 10 on?
Well, when we're pretending that we're not pretending when we are, there's another name for that. It's called lying. It's trying to manifest your image. It's trying to work on what you imagine you're creating in the mind of the other person. And it presumes that what you communicate to them is the same as what they're getting,
right?
Which isn't. And it assumes that what they're communicating to you is that you're getting what they intended to communicate, which you probably aren't. Because particularly if you're just depending on the verbal content of what they say. So it's like we're all in this morass of constantly generated and regenerated bullshit, which is basically interpretations, meaning making, reactivity from our own personal histories, and all of the shoulds and shouldn'ts that we've been brainwashed with whatever culture we grew up in. So it's like an uphill battle to not be smothered in shit.
A noble pursuit.
Right. And so you say, basically, I'll give you a hand if you'll give me a hand. And what helps you escape this morass of the mind is being capable of noticing. And what you have to notice, I'll stop preaching about this in a minute, but the way I like playing with my mind with this is what I call the awareness continuum is pretty simple. You can divide it into 3 parts. You can be aware of what's going on outside of you right now. I'm in front of a computer screen looking at a picture of you, nodding your head. Mm-hmm. And then the second aspect is you can be aware of what's going on within the confines of your own skin right now. I feel pressure on my butt from sitting in this chair and some vibration from my speaking in here. And the third aspect of the awareness continuum is what's going through your mind. You can notice your own thoughts and images. And that's all there is. There isn't any more. There's nothing possible you can get that isn't one of those 3 things. I call it inside, outside, upside down. Because the least reliable part is the interpreting machine up there generating bullshit. Yeah. So when we both presume that we don't know rather than that we know, we have to observe better. We have to pay attention better. And paying attention is more important than thinking. And so I'm in complete agreement with the Buddhists and the Sufis and most of the other teachers that base what they say and do and learn and share on observation and noticing rather than on interpretation.
Beautiful. That's important, obviously. And then for the purposes of what we're doing here, you know, the question is, what does it mean to live an inspired life? What does it mean to live a life that means something to you? So how does one become aware of what's really genuinely important to yourself? And I'll read a little quote here. This is a very ambiguous quote. I don't think people will really understand where you stand on this, but you say, even when we agree, sometimes delightfully agree about important things, and this is where it gets ambiguous, we're all completely fucking Looney Tunes delusional, nuts, full of shit as a Christmas turkey, around the bend and nutty as a fruitcake, bored, unsatisfied, depressed, and lying. I'm not really sure how you feel about this.
Okay.
That's one of your great quotes. And by the way, just a side note, as someone who loves great writing, your autobiography, Some Kind of Trailer Trash, I have to say is one of the best reads of any book I've ever read, ever. And it's your actual autobiography.
Thank you.
Rising up from trailer, what you call trailer trash, taking a shovel to your stepdad's head when you were 12, I think?
Yeah, 13 and a half.
And then running off and being on the front lines of revolution back in the 60s. And you've had an amazing life. You're still having one. So just a little side note. I just love your writing. That quote is fantastic. So how do we tune into what's actually important to, I don't know what the right word is, you know, our best destiny, the life that makes us happiest is probably the best way of putting it. How do we tune into that in the moment, like you're talking about?
Well, the idea does involve tuning in rather than figuring out.
Nice.
Our culture has taught us that always the secret to success is figuring something out. It's not, it's discovering something through noticing.
It's interesting, you know, I just noticed when you said that, Stephen Hawking just died two nights ago. And I all these images just went through my mind of we valorize figuring out, right? I remember I just had this image of him writing those equations on there's something heroic about this outward motion. And you said the other approach is tuning in. And it's harder to visualize that and turn it into a film and make great Instagram pictures. There's something that's more difficult about tuning in rather than figuring out, isn't there?
But I would say the most amazing thing about Stephen Hawking was his ability and capacity to be in the experience that he had with the body that he had and the limitations that he had and the compensation for the limitations that he developed is that he was using his mind but playfully and creatively rather than desperately. And he was capable of having a great life and lots of relationships with people, and to help a lot of people. And he did that out of not attempting to avoid anything, he was able to take care of himself and those around him, regardless of the limitations on his life. So his heroism wasn't in his genius, but his genius had something to do with his ability to be detached from the ideal or comparative ideal that automatically comes to him. Say, oh, the poor guy, look how crippled he is. But he wasn't that way about himself.
So dealing with his reality rather than the idea about his reality, which is probably how most of us encountered him in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Do you know Sean Stevenson?
I know Sean, yes.
Yeah, so Sean's a great friend of mine, also speaking in the summit. And he once said to me, Sean is in a wheelchair. He has broken bone disease. He's an amazing human being, also a PhD in psychology. And I remember we became friends about 14 years ago. And once we were just talking, and I said to him, wow, I just forgot your physical condition. And he says, yeah, it takes people a while. You know, there comes a point where that we stop processing the idea of what's supposed to be and just actually encountering him as a human being. So
yeah, exactly. That's a perfectly good example of just what I was trying to say about Stephen Hawking. Thank you.
And isn't that love, actually? You have another great quote, if I may. I have a whole collection of your great quotes. Where I, um, I just want to pull this up here for a second because it really struck me. Because to me, love is where it's all heading. If we're doing this life thing right, to love somebody. Hang on one second, please. It's a great quote. Love is when you let someone be the way she is. When you let up on your judgments of someone, there is a free space in which forgiveness and love occur.
Yeah.
So I imagine that's the model for loving yourself. That's kind of the answer of where we're heading, I think.
Well, the thing is that these distinctions between self and other are covered, made flowery or judgmental or something by the mind. But the idea, the baseline idea, is that the love of being, the love of being here, of being alive, of being a human living being with your heart beating, of being a part of being, the love of being precedes any of those like secondary distinctions. So
Hmm.
if I love you, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter what your sexual preference is or what your ideational label is. It has something to do with saying, I'm happy you're here. I'm happy we're here. I'm happy here is here. And so the ability to be in that sort of dumb place where you say, oh, isn't this nice that we're here? That's the source of love. And when the honeymoon is over, after 2 or 3 years of being together, and then everybody starts judging each other and saying, well, why don't you love me like you used to do? And your life becomes, instead of thrilling, a hillbilly song. That basically what turns your life into a hillbilly song is your expectations you generate in your mind and become attached to. So those expectations that you've generated and become attached to are the things that interrupt love.
Yes. Now I want to turn that wisdom on ourselves because it strikes me that if we're going to discover what actually inspires us, we have to tune in. We first have to accept us as ourselves, who we are, and then tune into what wakes us up the most. So I'm wondering what kind of guidance you have there.
Well, the what wakes you up the most is unpredictable. It comes out of paying attention. It's not so much that we can talk about it, but we're always like just pointing, just pointing. It's hard to define. Like what happens is your ability to be dumb enough to be present and not stupid enough to be thinking all the time. That's it. You have the reason I meditate regularly and at least once a day, and for varying periods from 20 to 40 minutes or something. I do that because it's like taking a vacation in the middle of the day. It's a reward. It's not an obligation. It's like, oh, thank God now I can meditate. And so, and I meditate because I just get dumber than a stick. And there I am sitting there dumber than a box of hammers and being happy. And then that carries on through after that because I'm not performing, I'm not working on anything, I'm not showing off, I'm not doing anything. I'm just basically sitting there like a dummy, which is sitting there like a dummy is the secret to the good life.
Yeah, the older I get, the more I admire dogs.
Yeah, me too.
You like their company a little better, huh? It's funny.
Yeah,
They're honest.
yeah, they are.
Just a little side note here. When you were talking about the privilege of meditating, I've always been fascinated by, every culture pretty much that I've come across loves getting drunk or high.
Uh-huh.
And I've always thought as, relieving the burden of consciousness is how I've always thought about it. And I'm wondering how you look at it.
Well, I think so too. Uh, I've talked. I I was in Haight Ashbury in the summer of love.
Nice.
I was there, and I had a school bus, and I did the whole thing, and I took about 60 acid trips during those years, and I smoked dope every day. I was that, like they said, if you remember the 70s, you weren't there. So I actually did the classic trail, and I learned a lot. What I learned was that whenever you drop 900 milligrams of LSD, the first thing you say is, "Oh shit, what did I do that for?"
Oh, Burning Man in my case, yes.
And then you think, well, there's nothing I can do about it now. You just give up. And then your bad trip stops. Your bad trip starts when you start resisting it. And you learn that when you give up the resistance, it's okay. You just surrender to your own involuntary nervous system. It's just that you are surrendering your illusion of control. And so one of the things that we learn from those things is that our illusion of control we were attached to is an illusion, because we're not in control of hardly anything we think we are. It's presumptuous. I wrote you a little bit about that. When I used to work in a mental hospital at Austin State Hospital. I was on the night shift, and
Yes.
I went to all the wards. One of the back wards, they had these two old guys. One of them was German and one of them was Czech. And neither one of them could speak each other's language, and neither one of them could speak English very well. But they would get together and sit on the top bunk bed of one of them, and they would start talking, and they would have that animated conversation. One of them speaking German, the other one Czech, neither one of them understanding a word that the other was saying. And they were laughing and hollering, and they were slapping hands, and they were carrying on, and they'd have this great conversation. And the supervisor would tell you have to break those people up. They keep right away. No, I did. I liked watching them, so I'd let them talk for an hour or two. and they always thought modeled for me what it is. Every time you see two human beings talking, I just presume there's two psychotics talking to each other.
It's a great quote. You said, show me a human being talking to another human being, and I will show you two psychotics talking to each other. Both certainly are hearing and understanding and being heard and understood. They are mutually psychotic, but without a clue. What if we were all under the illusion that we are communicating and truly sharing important things we simply are not? It's an amazing quote. It reminds me of watching these news panels on TV. Like, people just talking past each other.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it is like that. Yeah.
And something comes to mind also on a much more intimate level. And yeah, it's something I've been thinking about recently. When you wake up with your lover, when I wake up with my lover, and I open my eyes and I see her face, I'm dumb. It's a pure joy and appreciation of this person's face, the softness, the beauty, the gentleness, the wisdom behind it, the restfulness. And when her eyes open and I say something, I suddenly feel like I've entered that world of bullshit. I could say, you're so beautiful. I could say, I'm so happy to see you. I could say, whatever it is, get off my leg, whatever it is I say. Suddenly that I've noticed that no matter how true it sounds, something gets lost. Once we leave that dumb just presence with someone without having to turn it into something that has meaning, and everything you say has echoes and manipulative possibilities, and you're trying to now shape the direction of this moment with somebody. So anyway,
the rule of thumb is say the dumbest thing you can come up with. So, he's a
pretty. Sometimes that's kind of what I say. Nice. Lips.
Yeah, there you go. So,
yeah.
The dumber you are, the more loving you are anyway, probably. So
that's what I'm saying. I think there's a moment of this, and this is very personal, but I've noticed there's a moment of pure love when my eyes open and I see her, and as soon as we start talking, it now turns into something else. Are we going to have sex? What's going to happen next? What am I trying to create? What are you, So it's interesting, that dumb moment of love. Beautiful stuff. You are a national treasure, my friend. I want to ask you a couple of things, following on some of the things you just said. 3 things, just to set where we want to take this. You mentioned acid, and a couple of the people we've spoken to, and in my life, I've had a lot of experience with ayahuasca. As a way of waking up what's actually true for ourselves and what's inspired, I'd like to talk about that for a moment. Then I want to talk about what does it mean to live as an inspired man in a sick society, right? Where there's so much just mental illness and how we're living as a society right now. And in some ways, it's always been that way, but the shadow is now out in the open, right? The shadow is really out in the open suddenly. And then I want to end with talking about heroes and in discovering what really inspires us truthfully. Who do we look up to? Who do we choose to model ourselves, if that's a good idea at all? So let's do acid, sick society, and heroes for 300, Pat. Okay, so let's talk about hallucinogenics, entheogens, opening up. I don't even know if that's the word used. Opening up your mind. What guidance do you have there for guys?
I just think that there is this place that's beyond good and evil that the Sufis talk about. There's a field out there, Rumi said.
Right.
Good and evil, I'll meet you there.
Right.
And what he was talking about was beyond sexuality. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you're gay or straight. Doesn't any of that stuff. It's the being that you are and the being that I am are here. That's the fundamental dumbness that's necessary. Sorry, I gotta kill this one. Sorry. I'm on an interview. Let me call you back. Bye. Sorry, I thought I turned it off.
Right.
So, whenever you have the commitment to relating to another being, all the categories of classification of them are secondary. And what's primary is the presence of the connection. And whenever you're there, like with little kids, they tend to be there most of the time. And that's what's so endearing about them, is they'll look at you and they'll look right straight through you, like completely to your heart. And you just say, oh, you can't do anything but that, right? And so what happens there is that we want that to be who we are to other people. We want to be known. And we want to know them, but not know about them so much. Knowing about them is okay, it's secondary. But what's primary is to be able to have that fulsome experience of joyful being that comes from the simplicity of simply joyfully being. And so it doesn't, all the arguments of sexual division, of judgment, all that stuff, that's okay to play with the mind. But what counts here is the ability to sort of teleologically suspend the mind, or just let it be there floating around and noticeable things about it, but don't rank it to high importance. Don't try to make it be more meaningful.
So one of the uses of psychedelics, in my experience and yours, is it gives you some perspective on your mind. Is that what you're saying?
It does. It also gave me, when I was in my 20s and early 30s, it basically, I realized that the saying, don't trust anyone over 30 was true, because we knew things that they had no idea about, because we'd had experiences they hadn't had. And when I'd taken like a bunch of acid trips, and the people I was talking to, like, didn't matter if they were Democrat or Republican or whatever, they didn't know the shit that I knew and that my friends and I knew, and I knew it. And I did as much as I could to give them explanations, and I turned a lot of people on in my life. But basically the idea was to say, what's important here is you getting that your mind is not God, it's just a plaything, it's a toy. And it's a wonderful toy. I like writing books. That's what I do for a living. I write books. And it's a toy. It's a toy. By the way, Donald Trump has doubled Radical Honesty sales and doubled audiobook sales, and all my workshops. We had 80 workshops in the last 12 months all over the world, because everybody's interested in radical honesty, because we've got the poster child of the opposite on the TV screen every day. So,
Radical delusion.
yeah, I have to give him credit.
Send him a check.
Yeah, yeah,
That's actually a nice publicity stunt for you. That would be actually a great way to bring more attention to your work.
that is a good idea. I should send him $100.
But don't sign it. Don't sign it like he didn't sign
Yeah, that's it.
like he didn't sign that contract with Stormy Daniels, the porn star. He never signed that shut up contract he did with her. That's really funny. I would be happy to publicize that. I think you can get great attention. I mean, Radical Honesty, we haven't really even talked about your work, which we won't hear, but obviously Radical Honesty is your book. It's a great book. It's a very confronting book. And your workshops, which your students run mostly, I believe you teach as well. But your workshops actually get people to deal with how we lying to ourselves.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We have radical honesty trainers, and right now, like this last weekend, there was a workshop in Prague, and one in Munich, and one in South Carolina, and one in Texas.
Yeah, and what I want people to know, and I signed up twice, I haven't gone. That's how scary they are. What I want people to know is that it's, you don't come at Radical Honesty, you're not coming from a moralizing posture at all. You're coming from a point of this is pain relief.
Yeah.
That when we lie to ourselves, you have so many beautiful quotes throughout your work about the pain that it causes us when we lie to ourselves, because we carry so much stress and anxiety, right?
Yeah. You lie to yourself by lying to others.
Yes.
You lie to yourself. You have to be schizophrenic to lie to yourself. You have to have a me and a myself. But basically, you're lying to yourself through lying to others, and you're posing and pretending and making an image and doing all the things that, a sales pitch for what you think they would like.
Yeah. There's a great quote, by the way. I don't know if you know, Carl Sandburg has a poem called A Letter to His Son, where he says, basically, it's okay to tell white lies to get through life. Just don't tell them to yourself. That's not the exact quote.
Uh-huh.
That's something, if you haven't seen it, it's a great piece. It's really advice to his son as he heads off into the world. Like, it's okay. Sometimes you need to tell white lies to get through the bullshit of the world, but don't tell them to yourself.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Let's move now from this position of not lying to ourselves to, I'm curious how you look at, when you're young, especially, there's certain people you look up to theoretically. For me, I think it was Captain Kirk. It was Mark Twain, who had a great bullshit detector. And then it became Kurt Vonnegut, who also great bullshit detector. I'm wondering if you ever encountered him. You guys would be great friends.
No, I never met him in person. I read all of his books, and I loved Mark Twain, and I loved him. So you got my same heroes. Yeah,
that's nice. I didn't realize. Yeah, most people aren't familiar with Mark Twain's later work. He rewrote a book called The Mysterious Stranger. Over and over, he rewrote it many times. And Adam and Eve in Hell, where he was ornery by the end of his life. Man, he was like, fuck society, fuck the truths that people hang on to, fuck religion. And his books got darker and darker, and they're really amazing. Like by the end, there's not a lot of humor. So I'm not sure that's where we want to go. But, when I was young, these are the guys I looked up to. And when we look at heroes, who do we look up to as a culture? I know you and I have talked about sort of the militarization of heroes in our culture. And I'd love for you to give, a little analysis of how, as men, we're taught to look up to a certain kind of men and what alternatives we might choose.
Oh.
And by the way, I just want to say I suddenly became really aware of, that was a very non-duh moment for me. That was me trying to look smart. I have all this beautiful stuff in my head I love to share. But now I'm talking to you, I'm like, was I just trying to look smart? Or was I just pouring out what's true for me? So.
Well, it could be a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think it is.
The question about how...
Who the fuck should we look up to as heroes today? Or should we?
The difficulty about having heroes be very important is that the best heroes are small time heroes, I think.
Yeah.
And so a little kid can do something heroic. It doesn't mean it's necessarily life threatening. It just means it's heroic to admit that you lied about something.
Mm.
Or it's heroic to admit that you made a mistake. You made that mess and you said you didn't, and now you're saying that you did. And you say, well, thank you for telling me. Bless your heart. And basically what happens is heroes are people who make you want to say, thank you, bless your heart. And because thank you, bless your heart, coming from you nourishes you and nourishes them too. It's like no big deal is heroic, right? It's heroic to have things not be too heroic. It's heroic to have some kind of authentic humility that says, yeah, that's pretty good, but it's not that big a deal. You know, and it's not, you know, we're raised in a capitalist society. Capitalism depends on inequality. And the unfairness of capitalism means that inequality has to be sustained. You have to have like poor people being ripped off by rich people in order for capitalism to survive. And in order to do that, we have to have all kinds of reasons that justify stealing from the poor and giving more to the rich. And so we do it by glorifying something that someone that's superior did. And instead of having heroism be a constant superioristic thing, you can think of it as a frequent, recurring thing that shows up when you actually look at what's going on with human beings, in spite of how fucked up they are. That people who are damaged from the way they were raised still somehow now and then develop the capacity to love and are able to do it and sustain it and not have it be a reactivity to their past.
Would I be wrong to sort of restate that as saying that heroism, that it might be more useful for us to look at heroism as actions and not a state?
Yes, good. Yeah.
Micro heroisms. I like that.
Yeah.
And I love that you come back to the word love. You come back to the word love a lot, I'm noticing.
Uh-huh. I think so. It's, I believe it's clearly more important than brilliance. And that real brilliance comes out of love more than it does out of the mind. And that basically we have systematically in our culture overrated the mind and underrated noticing. And so I'm attempting to make a counterbalance in there. Because when people get a benefit from therapy with me or from being in a workshop, the benefit comes from them glorifying things less. They glorify heroes less. They glorify themselves less. They just think, well, good for you, poor little thing. You did the best you could. Bless your heart. That kind of way of being with people is you could even do that maybe with your worst enemy. I could even do it with Donald Trump if I had a little time.
I'd love to see that, by the way. but you know, it's interesting. You raised something interesting, as you always do every time I talk to you. Thank you. You know, I call it the tyranny of purpose. Like today, when people talk about the masculine, which is just a label, right? There's no such thing. There's actually no such thing called the masculine anywhere, right? I've never tripped over the masculine.
Right.
I would like to have tripped over my own masculinity once or twice. There's no thing. There's no thing called masculinity, but we throw this word around, and I would like to trip over my own masculinity. I lost my track. And part of the cultural definition of masculinity from different perspectives is, you know, a sense of high purpose, a sense of high service, And that if you don't have this sense of high purpose, that there's something off with you, that you're not, quote unquote, man enough, that you're narcissistic, that you're not in deep service, you're not the knight, you're not the king. You know, all these things are very powerful archetypes. They call to me, you know, they mean something to me. I'd like to be the knight and the king, but sometimes I want to sit on my ass and drink a beer. You know, sometimes I don't want to accomplish anything. Sometimes I don't want to be in service to anyone but my own body, right? A lot, actually. And so there's this tyranny, I call it the tyranny of purpose. And what you just raised is really interesting in terms of what we're looking at. What does it mean to be an inspired man? You know, maybe it's not capital I inspired. Maybe it's a set of these small inspired actions or small inspired moments rather than having this grand calling in life. Curious what you think of that.
I think it's a lot of fun to create your calling in life by observing, summarizing, and putting stuff together. So for the last 35 years, every year I've written up projects. I have an umbrella project for my life. And my book, Practicing Radical Honesty, is about this third stage. After you get ingrained in being honest and relating to people, you then can start, you've lost your mind and come to your senses, and then you get your mind back, grounded in your experience. But you're not using your mind as your identity anymore. You're using it as a toy. And then one of the most fun things to do, and in communication with other people, is to design your life. So I put up an umbrella project and I come up with a life purpose statement. And the purpose of my life each year is clearly stated. And then all the projects of my life, usually about 12 or 15 projects, are subsumed under that. I've written 8 books that way. The 3 children were project write-ups before they were ever conceived.
Is that how you have kids?
Yeah. But the idea is to use your mind joyfully to do big things. It's fun. But when it becomes an obligation, it becomes a should. It's just a part of you should make a plan. You've already screwed it up then. Because, oh, yeah, I think I'll make a plan to do this. And I'd really like to do this. So I've done that joyfully for lots of years, and I enjoy it, and I'm in favor of it. And I believe that it's a good thing to do for joy, and other people help you get clear about your intentions. And it clarifies your thinking by interrupting your thinking, because other people have bright ideas. And then you find allies who want to help you do it. And so people help me make babies and build houses and move from one place to another and write books. And I'm indebted to thousands upon thousands of people who joined me in this sort of joyful co-creation of using ideas and starting out with an idea that I had that I wanted to develop. And they do it like I'm helping you with this idea right now of having this series, and I'm happy to do it. And I hope a whole lot of people get a benefit out of it.
Oh, I'm sure. It's funny. Yeah, you 2 things. One is I'm noticing the words joy and love, which you've used a lot, have been coming up with some of the best discussions I've been having with other leaders, notably Yannick Silver, who's an amazing entrepreneur who does great work in the world. I don't know if you know Yannick. Wonderful guy. He works closely with Richard Branson. They help clean up the oceans. They help villages. They teach people crafts in Africa. Fantastic work, but it comes from a place of joy and love, not a sense of obligation. And by the way, I noticed also while you were talking, I'm very noticing. Whenever I talk to you, I'm very self-aware because I always figure you're one step ahead of me anyway. That this series of conversations that I'm having, this whole Inspired Man Summit, this conversation of what does it mean to be an inspired man, came from a place of should, like it's something I really feel like needs to be done, right now. But it also came out of, hey, I want to hang out with my favorite guys and have really deep, fun, interesting conversations and grow.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great motivation, right?
Totally selfish. Totally selfish.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with selfish if it includes the other.
Yeah. So the point is, I guess, that you can have both. There's no purism here. There's a sense of should. I think this is an important conversation for men right now, to wake up to what's good about us. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of negativity floating around and a lot of bullshit, a lot of false conflict that's created by extreme voices on both sides. But in the middle, I tend to think that most men and most women have goodwill toward each other, have pain to share, and we can actually create a space to share that pain without going into these histrionics of, hi, you're pretty is rape culture. I think men find that hard to deal with. And I think women find it hard to deal with the fact that men can't understand their pain. So there's a middle area where I think it's important what we're doing here addresses some important
I
shows.
think you need that whole conversation is you have to be willing to go through things rather than just stop them because they're bad. You have to get mad and then experience anger and then get over it. You get hurt, you experience hurt, and then you get over it. You go through it, get over it. Doesn't take but about 90 seconds, but you'll spend 30 years to avoid that 90 seconds.
Yes. Very efficient.
So what we're after is that they're in our sharing with each other. Of course, I'm going to be a male chauvinist pig. I was raised in a whole culture of it. Jesus, the Judeo-Christian tradition is full of it. Yes, I am a male chauvinist pig. So now, what else? What's next? Then I manifest it. She resents me for it. So I don't blame you. I appreciate you for the resentment. We keep on going. And what happens, we end up unloading our cultural brainwashing and discovering one being relating to another, using our minds to play with.
Right. From a place of acceptance, I want to throw that word back in, which was an important one that you use, accepting that this is just another being.
Yeah.
I said it a different way to my kids when they were pointing out, they said, oh, this person's just a hater. And I said, hey, everyone's on their own journey of healing, whether they're aware of it or not. Uh-huh. And it strikes me that this journey of healing that we're going through as individuals, hopefully as a culture, is basically this process of radical honesty in some ways, coming to terms with what's true and unlovable and unadmirable about each of us, and saying, hey, this is my bullshit. This is where I've caused pain. I mean, I've had this process myself in my own life the last couple of years. This is where I've caused pain, and not hiding it and not dismissing it, not diminishing it. Yeah. And as you said, moving through to the other side.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, we're on our way.
Yeah.
RadicalHonesty.com is where people can find your workshops. Is that right?
Yeah.
Great. So people have access to, I think I noticed Tabor and some of your teachers are doing evenings, introductions in different cities.
All over the place. Yeah. If you go to RadicalHonesty.com, it's upgraded about every 2 weeks about what's going on and where in the world. There's a lot more going on in Europe right now than there is here, but we have such a great poster child for dishonesty that I think it's still magnifying our numbers.
It's really, if you could have tapped your demonic imagination to create somebody, it would have been him. And I'm just thinking about, I would have run into that building to save those kids. That was it just boggles the mind. The things that come out of his mouth, they're as a writer, as an artist, they're wonderful to behold. As a human being and someone who lives in this country, it's horrifying. But RadicalHonesty.com, it's the process of, as you said, I love this phrase, losing your mind and coming to your senses, coming back to what's real. So I thank you. Every time I talk to you, I feel happier. I feel lighter. I feel more humbled. I'm so much more aware of my bullshit every time I talk to you, even though you go very light on me. You're not coming. I'm reading you, just like I'm reading myself through the filter of your work. And I hope everyone has the opportunity to read your work, come to your workshops, and learn more.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. RadicalHonesty.com. Thank you.